Previously on Cover Star.
Just keeping on with my flow.
We met the voices and we met our first two panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bickford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode, Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last 2 episodes, we got into the covers and the judges looked, listened, and scored. 2 contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the content capital.
Last year, you had the time of your life. This year will be even more fantastic. Get your tickets now for Gone But Not Forgotten 2.
I feel like home.
They gave us the memory.
Woman, you could run away too.
They gave us the rhythms of life. Now let's give them their flowers.
Trinidad and Tobago, join us for a special tribute to our legendary musical icons who have passed on in Gone But Not Forgotten.
Including Bunny, Swallow, Singing Francine, Shadow, Arrow, Maestro, Rootsman, Blacks, Sandoli, Ras Shorty Eye, plus lots more. Their music still lives on in our heart. An unforgettable night as we celebrate their legacy in Gone But Not Forgotten. Wednesday, February 4th at Napa and Thursday, February 5th at Sapa. Showtime both nights, 6:30 p.m. Your master of ceremonies, Sonny Bling.
Tickets $300 and $250.
Early bird tickets bought by Monday, January 26th. Cost $50 less.
Available at Crosby's, Jumbo Foods Barataria, Mart's Liquor Palace, Digomate Main Road, all Kenny Sports, Western Union, Tuna Puna, all Extra Foods, Athletes by the Park, and IslandEtickets.com. An extra $10 off for online purchases. For more info, call 732-3402. Gone, but not forgotten.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak.
Better, you can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
WESN.
Life is a funny thing because life as we know it is based on a whole host of random concepts that we have decided to apply to it, which are unique to us as far as we know. There are certain things you don't see in any other known species of life. You see social dynamics, yes. You see the need to eat, the need for bonding, community. You see certain animals travel, certain settle down and live in certain fixed areas, have a den. And there are a lot of parallels. We don't know what any other intelligent life, at least most of us don't, would make of existence. We only know that at some point we're beyond the limitations of monkeys and dolphins and all other somewhat intelligent life that we share this planet with. Because we have both good and bad. The bad, of course, being, well, the turmoil and strife that we cause for ourselves. If you look around the world, it's one thing when there's a tsunami, when there's an earthquake, when there's a hurricane, when there's a tornado. There's one thing if you want to say global warming will cause a famine. But then it's another thing when human decisions cause a famine. When human decisions cause affordability of living to increase to the point where you put people under strain and stress and pressure. Where people have conflict and that conflict is not resolved, despite the lessons of history, which we at one point learned and now somehow, I guess because as new generations come in, those that have not learned it directly for themselves take it for granted. Start to get new ideas, which are really old ideas, on what they can and can't get away with, how to push the envelope, how to prove their cojones. But the flip side to that, all of these self-inflicted gunshot wounds, all of these issues that we create for ourselves, because when you get down to it, war is an issue we create for ourselves. Crime is an issue that we create for ourselves. There's no cloudy weather that causes someone to just, I think I'm going to hurt somebody today, just because it's rain. No, rain could cause landslips and a whole host of other natural disasters, but it's not going to impact human behavior to that extent if one is a properly, fully developed adult. But alongside the bad comes the good. Culture is something that I guess we don't necessarily know if other species that we share this planet also have or have anything close to what we have. Yes, it's songs that certain birds sing. It sounds melodious to us. We don't necessarily know if they're looking to make art or if they're looking to communicate. And we have something that when you think about it, there's nothing intrinsic to the natural world with regards to culture and art. These are things that are just created because we like how it sounds or we like how it looks. To the cosmos, it's irrelevant. And I hope it's not necessarily unique to us. But the question is now, to what degree do we appreciate it? Because life is a funny thing. And if we all live just to survive, well, there was a point in time where it seemed as though we were going to be coming out of that reality, and then the world got slapped back down. Because just living to survive, I do wonder, as a species, perhaps we've gotten soft, because I don't know if we could really appreciate life that way. But now the question is, to what extent do we value art and culture? Because maybe for an artist that is capable, they could survive off of that. But for the rest of us, enjoying art and culture is a luxury. Now here in TNT, one of the things is we have our own unique culture. We share aspects with the rest of the Caribbean, but we look to certain parts of the art form of Caribbean culture as being developed here. And how much of it do we take for granted, and how much of it we just can't afford to pay attention to. Tuco is saying that Calypso is not only alive, but soaring. I'm not entirely sure if I fully believe that. At least not where it should be. Because I do think that for a country that has created so much unique culture, that has pioneered a unique art form, that has created, I believe, the only instrument in the 20th century, if my research is correct. We have not necessarily looked towards finding that further meaning in life in what we ourselves have created. At some point, we were content with merely just surviving, and on some level, culturally, I would argue, Lyman is surviving. How many people spend their days? It's almost as though this is just part of the process. Wake up, go to work, come home, or go to a bar after work. If you go home, you go to a bar after you come home, you lime, or you call friends over, you lime. Because how many Trimegonians, that's the extent to life. Work, lime, eat, sleep, repeat. Now it seems as though the government wants to tax carnival and fetes, and some people might say, yeah, they make money off of thing and they should pay the fair share. And I understand that, but my fear is, if you just go in with the assumption, first of all, what parts of the art form on the margins? Yeah, we assume soca stars make a lot of money. First of all, at some point, Marshall is going to retire. Who is in line and ready to replace him commercially? Now, if they want to tax carnival artists, Calypso is soaring. Could Calypso deal with increased taxes on their income? Could Calypsonians deal with that? Why can't Calypso be a commercial art form? One of the things, unfortunately, that holds certain industries back in this country is the government's inability to understand what taxes means to industries that have not really gotten off the ground and are not mature enough to be a viable source of sustainable revenue. So to what extent are we now lumping all of Carnival when in reality, I'm sure most people just think about soca, maybe chutney soca, and of course the carnival bands, beads and feathers, not traditional mass. But are you going to have a law that's going to exempt traditional mass and exempt calypso and kaiso and extempo? Because while obviously, and this is one of the things that I think people need to better understand, it's very easy to say, oh, this person is rich, so we should tax them. But depending on the situation, when you institute these things, they're not the only ones who are going to get taxed. And incentives are a funny thing, but on some level, straightforward. If you tax something too much, people will take the cost-benefit analysis, whether they do it formally or not, and if it's no longer worth it to them, they're going to stop. Now, the Minister of Culture and Community Development says she's determined to evolve and enhance the cultural sector. And obviously, there are certain situations that, you know, there are probably certain taxes that should apply. But I believe a measured approach, and now I'm not saying what that approach is, but one where you could sustainably implement certain things and not risk any stalling of the growth of the culture and the commercial aspect of it, which is necessary. And that's a funny thing. Commercialization is also, technically speaking, a man-made thing. You can't teach, I believe I saw a situation where it was squirrels. You can teach an animal how to utilize some sort of barter or currency system, but they generally don't use it, right? We have to teach them that. But it's so far the best way we figured out how to assign resources at the scale of a global level. Trying to centrally plan things usually works out even worse than free economic markets. Just ask the Soviet Union on what underreporting, overreporting, and a lack of efficiency could do. I don't have an issue with trying to evolve and enhance the cultural sector. My concern is trying to milk it for whatever it's worth before it has a chance to really get off the ground. Commercialization and profits is usually seen as an evil thing, except when you are benefiting from the profits. But that's the whole point. No one necessarily goes into a field to not make something of themselves. So at what point are we going to say doctors make too much money and lawyers make too much money and we should just have a doctor's tax and a lawyer's tax? That's a very good way to no longer have doctors. And that's why you don't do it. Why do you think businessmen are any different? Or artists? Being an artist already in TNT, for most people, is a struggle. And if we want to see our culture evolve and become more and more commercialized, it needs to be dealt with some sort of long-term vision and plan. And it's not necessarily that the minister doesn't have a plan. I think she very well might have a plan. But I do think that the overall financial strategy of the government is not very well thought out, at least based on what they've given us so far. Now, what we've seen, case in point, with the Flava Village, seemingly it's a success. The problem is the infrastructure with regards to getting people to the venue, into the venue, the transportation routes. As much as the Savannah seems like a well-sized, well-built piece of transportation infrastructure road network, it actually can't really handle events at the grandstand, at the paddock, growing that much more, in my estimation. I could be wrong, but this is coming from a guy who's basically going to be stuck behind a wall of traffic if it becomes any more popular than it already is. Like at some point, it's not going to be enough road. So what are we going to do about it? Because all of these things do impact commercial viability and growth. And if there's no strategy behind it. But coming back to my initial point, our culture, it is something that allows us, it's not the only thing, socialization, social relationships, bonds between each other. These are things that make life worth living beyond survival. Art and culture is another aspect of life that makes it worth living beyond survival. But it's interesting how little we've really devoted of ourselves to it for our own. Now the question is, have we been living on survival mode, at least more of us than we would think, for the last 60 years? Or have we become entitled to an easy survival, and we don't necessarily look beyond our most basic concerns in life? Which is funny because, again, if you think about it, fetting and alcohol, and now I guess you could say marijuana, seems to be part of that basic necessity of a Trimegonian life. And to me, that just describes on some level the immaturity of a society. There are mature societies that create their own problems, don't get me wrong. But we haven't gotten to the cycle of maturing and making more extensive, long-term, mature decisions on certain aspects of society that has no short-term benefit. We haven't reached that point to then let the cycle come back around. And I fear we have trapped ourselves in a situation where we tolerate our own excesses and mistakes and our own self-made issues and problems with the justification that it's always somebody else to blame, and we never look at ourselves in the mirror to try to figure out what did we do to cause this situation and how can we change ourselves before we asked somebody else to change. And that could be seen in how we look at crime, and how we look at the economy, and how we look at politics. One thing I want to point out, I had this thought, and then I immediately had a conversation with a colleague who expressed similar views. Not everything is going wrong. I actually do hope that Minister Benjamin is able to improve Carnival over time, just once it's sustainable. But also, Minister of Works, just want to make sure I know they split it, and I hope that I'm not. Yes, Minister of Works and Infrastructure, Jerlene John, spoke about a situation with the Spirit where passengers were left stranded for hours after rough seas, according to the report, caused the boat to be basically near the port, but unable to actually approach and dock. The minister is quoted as saying this: "The water is so rough, I don't understand what's happening, so the boat is just trying to dock, and I told them, just take your time, because I don't want an incident, so it's right there in the harbor. I already told the CEO of the Port Authority to let the captain take his time, right? I don't want no incident." And that's the kind of decision making that I could appreciate, that I could agree with. Err on the side of caution, not on the side of comfort and placating people who might not necessarily know better on what's going on. This is assuming everything is as it's reported, and in this case, I am willing to take it at face value, because Minister John has done nothing to make me suspicious of her statements, suspicious of her decision-making, question what it is that she tells us on her line of thinking and her motivations. Because while this example seems obvious, oh, you do what's safe, right? When you read it, you're like, this is what I would do too. Well, I always go back, and I've used this example before. This is human nature. If you've ever watched the movie Jaws, one of the plots of that film is the mayor wants the beaches open because, you know, the island needs its tourism to do well in order to make enough money for the year. And the police chief doesn't want the beaches open because there's a shark. So they kill a little shark, and now the mayor says, it's done, reopen the beaches. And all the police chief could do is watch and wait. because the immediate concerns of getting the economy right for the following fiscal year superseded any concerns about physical safety from a man-eating predatory animal that was difficult for them to deal with. And the fact of the matter is, in a lot of cases, a lot of people will make that decision. We can't have the ferry, we can't have the people on the ferry for so long. They're complaining. I don't want them to complain. The ferry can't stay out there for so long. It's mucking up the schedule. We have other boats that have to go. We have to keep on schedule, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there are times when that matters. But now take a step back. Think about, long-term government policy. Because the having to stay on schedule and not wanting to anger the passengers being stuck out there for too long, that's not too dissimilar to, we'll give out a grant. Or we'll find a way to give out some freeness or the other, some program or the other. And the long-term thinking is the better medicine. Now, you had to stay stuck in this boat for several hours because we don't think it's safe to try and dock if the boat crashes now, and what if it sinks, and evacuating that boat. Then, of course, it's all of the property that the passengers are going to lose, and the government's going to lose a boat if it sinks, right? That's the long-term bitter medicine. Now, I guess, to be fair to the government, are the taxes that they're proposing not necessarily doing a good job of explaining it, but are all of these different taxes that I call nickel and diming us, are they the better medicine that we need? Is that the proverbial, well, the boat has to stay out for us to stay safe, for our economy to stay afloat? That's a different conversation. But I guess God is a Trinity, and now we get to see what happens when he is not. In more ways than one. We will be tested if we continue to be complacent. We will be tested in a way that we're not going to like. But perhaps that's what we need. Perhaps we need bitter medicine in a different way. We want to avoid the test, but life says no. At some point, you could avoid it only for so long. And then you will have to face something more than just the blessed life of paradise that we seemingly have enjoyed for the majority of our nation's existence and even before. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to daily review a lot of national security topics. I know, but this is the news, folks. Sean Michael Small, this is talking about the WESN. We'll be right back after this.
Last year, you had the time of your life.
Amplia!
This year will be even more fantastic. Get your tickets now for Gone But Not Forgotten 2.
I feel like home.
They gave us the memory.
Woman, you could run away too.
They gave us the rhythms of life. Now let's give them their flowers.
Trinidad and Tobago, join us for a special tribute to our legendary musical icons who have passed on in Gone But Not Forgotten.
Including Bunny, Swallow, Singing Francine, Shadow, Arrow, Maestro, Rootsman, Blacks, Sandoli, Ras Shorty Eye, plus lots more. Their music still lives on in our heart. An unforgettable night as we celebrate their legacy in Gone But Not Forgotten. Wednesday, February 4th at Napa and Thursday, February 5th at Sapa. Showtime both nights, 6:30 p.m. Your master of ceremonies, Sonny Bling.
Tickets $300 and $250.
Early bird tickets bought by Monday, January 26th cost $50 less.
Available at Crosby's, Jumbo Foods Barataria, Mart's Liquor Palace, Digo Martin Main Road, all Kenny Sports, Western Union, Tuna Buna, all Extra Foods, Athletes by the Park, and IslandEatTickets.com. An extra $10 off for online purchases. For more info, call 732-3402. Gone, but not forgotten.
Don't stop,
Previously on Cover Star,
just keeping on with my flow.
we met the voices and we met our first two panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bickford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode, Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last two episodes, we got into the covers and the judges looked, listened, and scored. Two contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the content capital.
As you come in. Long time I see you, Jill. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yeah. Total waste. So I supposed to stay home the whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about that. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it was your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two, better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, the big story, or rather the big news story. I would argue the shooting is still technically the big story. But the news story is the fact that the SOE has come to an end, and with it, the preventative detention orders also basically come to an end. That has caused the detainees who were not previously incarcerated under the criminal justice system to be released to the public. Now, that has led to the Prime Minister basically saying that we could be under another SOE if necessary. She will call another state of emergency and raise hell if they unleash terror on law-abiding citizens. I want the gangs, this is the quote from the Twitter/X post, because again, actually being present is no longer a prerequisite to lead, I guess. We could work remotely and hope that the person behind the Twitter fingers are actually the Prime Minister. She goes on to say in the post, I want the gangs and those detainees released from prison to know that decent law-abiding citizens are fed up with your criminality, and I will have no hesitation in enacting another state of emergency if you cannot behave yourselves. You will be returned straight to prison, and this time your friends and family who aid your criminality will accompany you. If criminals want to terrorize law-abiding citizens and their families, I will do everything legally possible to terrorize criminals and their families. It's time to tip the scales in this country towards law-abiding citizens. I will use every means within the law to make criminals and their friends and families' lives absolute hell. Which all sounds nice on the surface, except when she says legally possible, dare I say, that threat doesn't amount to much. That's why she is basically using the threat of another state of emergency. The analysis comes in from one attorney, Gregory Delzin, right? He brings up a point because the Prime Minister is saying if things go bad, we'll call another SOE. He brings up a point, however, that behavior cannot be used as a legal basis for a state of emergency because, ironically, what's the emergency? The murder rate is down. Now, maybe if the murder rate went back up to 600 murders, it would be a bit more justifiable. But it's very subjective because that's not a specific measure that was outlined in the legislation that governs when a state of emergency can be called. So, Delson said, while the Prime Minister retains the constitutional authority to proclaim another state of emergency, I wonder to what extent, however, does the President get in that way? Mr. Delson said the law requires the existence of an emergency situation and does not permit declaration based solely on whether criminals behave themselves. Now, here's, however, the unfortunate monkey wrench in that. Technically speaking, we kind of already had that twice. First, under the PNM, which already made me uncomfortable because, again, what was the emergency? Crime was high? Crime was high for years. Crime was really high for years. For basically the entire tenure of Airlink Christopher, for parts of Gary's tenure, for McDonald Jacobs' tenure, which is not necessarily to blame him for it. He was acting commissioner for a short while. And of course, before Gary, we've had issues. More than 100 murders potentially is a very high murder rate for a population size, right? So crime has been high for a long time. The PNM called a state of emergency. There was no consequence for it. That sets a precedent. Then the new government calls a state of emergency because there were threats against members of the state, but then the continuation was similar to the PNM's justification of, well, crime. So as much as Mr. Delson can say this, and he's probably right in saying this, no one either has the capacity or was willing to say no to the states of emergencies that we've had. So we've already had precedents that sets this up. And it started with the opposing political parties. So they can't step in and say, hey, let's not do this. This isn't right. Technically, you all did it. But it goes back to the key point of what is the threat of legal terrorizing the criminals? Well, it's basically state of emergency. Because there are so many deficiencies in the law. So right now, you want to know who is the first victim, apparently, of violence from the people released from the preventative detention orders? One of the people who were released under the preventative detention orders. Apparently, I want to get this story here. One of the released individuals, his family apparently tried to whisk him away. But gunmen searched for him, found him, and they attempted to kill him. Drive-by shooting, 5 p.m., 3 people, including a 40-year-old woman, 20-year-old man, 11-year-old girl, were shot as they stood on the road talking to the man, which I believe is the target. One of the gentlemen released from being detained under PDOs due to the SOE being over. That's interesting. That's interesting. What are we going to do to, because are you going to say that the family members were complicit in something so we don't care about them? That's one of the things that Minister Alexander is saying. Why are we, there's so much. Why are we defending those advocating for criminals rather than law-abiding citizens? Well, you see, the problem is intelligence doesn't matter in a court of law. And legally, you can't call them criminals on some level until you convict them of something, because it's innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't matter how much you know that they're a pest. It doesn't matter how much you think they broke the law. It's what you could prove. I mean, the minister said it himself with regards to the shooting situation in defense of the officers. On a whole, do you know what is important here? Evidence. And then he went on to say with regards to that situation, the police could bring out evidence, but we respect the rule of law. Well, when you're trying to do things without presenting evidence to the public ain't going to believe you. More on that maybe tomorrow with regards to why people are calling for him to be fired. But also, why is it that apparently we need evidence to look at certain aspects of the state and accuse them of things, but for criminals, you don't necessarily need evidence, because the commissioner has said that the state of emergency has been successful, but then when you look at the amount of actual charges laid, I think there's only 34 people charged under the state of emergency. Of the 36 people they have evidence against, 16 have already been charged, but are yet to be taken before the court. That's a whole other issue. A further 22 be charged following the revocation of their PDOs. Why is it that they're only going to be charged once the PDOs were ended because of the ending of the state of emergency? I don't know why. Meanwhile, you have to understand, it's 151 preventative detention orders were executed, and 50 were not because those suspects went underground. So that's 201 PDOs, of which apparently they only have evidence against 36, or maybe 36 out of 151. I'm not entirely sure, because the commissioner said it himself, 100% prosecution would have been the ultimate result. So I don't know how, maybe this is a fault of the newspaper reporting that the commissioner said that the SOE was 100% effective, because he then went on to say 100% prosecution would have been the ultimate result. What is that? When it's 500% effective? I don't know how you have more than 100% yes, mathematically, you probably might be able to do so, but conceptually, 100% is total. So if we didn't achieve the ultimate result, maybe it wasn't 100% effective. If you can't even get evidence for half of the people you have on PDOs, maybe it's not 100% effective. Listen, I don't necessarily like it when criminals get off of technicalities and high-priced defense attorneys are able to run circles around the prosecution. Although, to be fair, sometimes the prosecution be doing stupidness. Whoever is, the police, DPP's office, whatever, right? It seems as though we have a whole set of cases that have a failure to launch. And then you have the issues with the judiciary, which is different. It's not about defending the rights of criminals. They're technically not criminals yet. And if you don't have a proper standard in the law to determine who's a criminal and who's not, I'm going to say it again. One day it could be you or one of your family members. And then you'll be saying, this is unfair. How could this happen? Because you left it, you want it to be subjective. The Minister of Homeland Security wants these things to be subjective. Because on some level, there's the dark underbelly of policing where subjectivity and violence are seen as reasonable measures of force, of a response to crime. That's what we have left out of this whole situation. By the way, there's another matter that now went to the courts of another police shooting under similar circumstances. But hey, we don't know what went on, so we the public don't have a right to speak about members of the public getting killed. Because we want to stereotype everybody from certain demographics and geographic locations. Except Joshua Samaru, as far as I'm aware, based on what has been revealed to the public, doesn't qualify for those shortcut demographics. I could be wrong. I didn't check to see where, I can't remember where he lives, if that's a PNM area. East Indians can live in PNM area, sure. But hey, there were a lot of people that wanted to bring up race to justify certain things. maybe it's not that simple. Maybe it's not that easy. Maybe you have to consider, because I suspect there are a group of individuals that think it's fine for the government to do things because it won't involve me. Well, we've already seen where police abuse and violence is not limited to any one race in this country, right? This is no apartheid situation here. This is equal opportunity extrajudicial violence. Whoever wants to put their head in the sand on that, go right ahead and do so. But in the meantime, I will live in the world of innocent until proven guilty, because it is by that same concept that allowed David Lee to still be a minister. It is a principle that must be applied across the board. So when people say he shouldn't be a minister and he shouldn't be in parliament, I was not 100% on that, because I live in the world of innocent until proven guilty. We can't even hear exactly what Mr. Samaru was running from, what he allegedly did. Does he have a rap sheet? They haven't revealed that to us. Probably not. Was there a gun? They haven't revealed that to us. Probably not. If they have these things as evidence, it's going to prejudice the investigation. That seems rather convenient. So, state of emergency is over. The detainees are out. To what extent are we supposed to see lawsuits now? The thing is, state of emergencies on some level is playing police like a game of chicken. You want to detain these guys, 36 out of 151. You don't have evidence against. Now you're against the clock. Who's going to blink first? Once you start the ball rolling, if you can't get evidence to actually do anything meaningful and you're just detaining people with no justifiable reason, because in the eyes of the court, it's going to end up that way. It doesn't matter what you think you know. Again, Minister of Homeland Security said, you need evidence. So how many of these situations are going to end up lawsuits because we played the game of chicken and we lost? We started the clock on a thing and we couldn't actually see it to its fruition before we ran out of time. And I say all of that to say, the reason why we're in this mess is no one is willing to deal with the criminal laws, the criminal justice system. Because why is it that basically, just look at what the Prime Minister has allegedly posted on X. I say allegedly because I have no proof that she did it or not. I don't know if she approved the message or not. You see, when Dr. Lee Rowley does a press conference, I know that the nonsense came from the horse's mouth. But in this case, very often when social media post goes bad, the person comes out and said, well, a staffer did it. All right. So she posts, we will legally terrorize the criminals if they terrorize civilians. We will call for another SOE, and that is the clue. They then have to ease back into threatening another SOE, because that is literally the last arrow in the quiver. That's why they wanted the Zosos. That's why on some level the Zosos made sense if you're thinking practically in the immediate needs of the moment, because no one is looking to solve the long-term issues with the criminal justice system. And dare I say, we can have all these Zosos we want and all these state emergencies we want, but until you do that, to make it so that police have an actual legitimate chance to gather reasonable evidence for a reasonable burden of proof, whatever that may be. But right now, things ain't working, because it's against the law to be in a gang, and yet we can't convict any gang members of being in a gang. We are fooling ourselves to think that everything is set. The SOEs are literally, by both governments, admitting that there are deficiencies in the system. Now the question is, to what extent are they also admitting, and we don't know how to fix it? In part because the Minister of Homeland Security, that's beyond his depth. The Minister of Defense, I don't know. The Attorney General, the Minister of Defense, they're all lawyers. There's also a Minister of Justice. There should be enough behind the Minister of Homeland Security to solve that problem, but that's not on the agenda. Stand your ground laws and, gunning down people without trial, that apparently is the primary strategy. To be fair though, that strategy predates the current government. That's why I'm not blaming the current government for what happened, but I will at some point blame them for the response. That said, the Minister of Homeland Security has been a police officer for how many years? So in that capacity, he is responsible for some of these things, whether directly or indirectly. And he has been part of whatever problem may be there in the service. And it's not just me saying that. I have heard retired police officers, not Ashraf, speak on these things, their opinions. At least one who is very much knowledgeable about situations like this. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. But hey, no one wants to fix our criminal code. No one wants to fix the marijuana laws and all the other things. That's fine. That's fine. We'll just continue on. At some point, a new SOE will have to happen because we can't get zones of special operations. But it will more or less be the same thing. That's a very interesting way to live. Let's take a break. We'll switch gears. We'll welcome the TTPS Media Ambassador. Stay tuned. Talking Point will be right back after this.
Last year, you had the time of your life. This year will be even more fantastic. Get your tickets now for Gone But Not Forgotten 2.
I feel like home.
They gave us the memory.
Woman, you could run away too.
They gave us the rhythms of life. Now let's give them their flowers.
Trinidad and Tobago, join us for a special tribute to our legendary musical icons who have passed on in Gone But Not Forgotten.
Including Funny, Swallow, Singing Francine, Shadow, Arrow, Maestro, Rootsman, Lax, Sandoli, Rash Shorty Eye, plus lots more. Their music still lives on in our heart. An unforgettable night as we celebrate their legacy in Gone But Not Forgotten. Wednesday, February 4th at Napa and Thursday, February 5th at Sapa. Showtime both nights, 6:30 p.m. Your master of ceremonies, Sonny Bling.
Tickets $300 and $250.
Early bird tickets bought by Monday, January 26th. Cost $50 less.
Available at Crosby's, Jumbo Foods Barataria, Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, All Kenny Sports, Western Union, Tunapuna, All Extra Foods, Athletes by the Park, and IslandEatTickets.com. An extra $10 off for online purchases. For more info, call 732-3402. Gone, but not forgotten.
Don't stop.
Previously on Cover Star,
Just keeping on with my flow.
we met the voices and we met our first two panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bigford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode, Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last 2 episodes, we got into the covers and the judges looked, listened, and scored. 2 contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the content capital.
As you come in. Long time I see you, girl. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yes, total waste. So I supposed to stay home whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about them. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it's your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
I'm back here on talking about the WSND Content Capital, and on some level, we have to switch gears. Perhaps it's a necessary thing. Can't be totally depressed all the time, as much as, look, and this is just one of those stories where, or let me say, that is just one of those stories where I'm not necessarily going to want to let it die. Similar to the Paris situation, obviously very different circumstances. But we also have other things to talk about because, truthfully, statistically, directly these things are not going to affect all of us. What will affect all of us, however, are the more mundane things that we take for granted. So we will continue the mundane conversation here. it's seemingly mundane, except when you think about it, the amount of people that potentially end up dead to these things are not a small amount, right? And you probably are at a greater risk of these things than certain types of violent crime. Here to speak further about alcohol consumption and safety during this very much a period of excess, Media Ambassador, Acting ASP, Christopher Rood.
Good day, Sean. Good day to your viewers and your colleagues. We just want to remind, as last week we did speak about it, the use and abuse of alcohol and other drugs, both legal and illegal drugs, in terms of mixing them, in terms of the effect it has on persons who are liming, partying, going to social events. So we just want to remind members of the public what we spoke about last week, that it continues. We are continuing to drive for carnival safety, and around this time you know that we have a lot of incidents, road traffic accidents that are fatal and serious, and you have incidents of rape, date rape, partygoers being molested, persons being robbed, persons being victims of crimes because they are now, how to put it, that they are being affected by the drugs that they take and are left to succumb to that, what do you call it?
Well, they're kind of left on their own after they're robbed, they were drugged, right? And impaired.
Yeah, they're impaired.
Still out in the public and still not safe.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that to potentially get a different perspective on the conversation, I wonder to what extent part of the reason why there's a higher risk. Yes, there's ironically the more successful carnival is and the more crowds they have. The more complex and dangerous the situation is because the harder it is to manage, right?
Right, yeah.
But then on top of that now, to what degree is the public's desire for a release, right? We could, in other avenues, we could, talking point could debate on the economic reality and what people are feeling and the crunch and whatnot. But at the end of the day, carnival is like the ultimate time of release.
Correct, yeah.
And perhaps the more stressed you are, the more you're like prioritizing release. And then now you get complacent because it's like, I'm not here to study them things where you worry about safety from blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about that, man. Just have some, hey, look. I know this fella and he have a pill and we go feel good tonight. Blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, the things that you would do for most of the year to not do something stupid, to not put yourself in a situation, all of a sudden those defensive mechanisms in your brain, you just willfully let it melt away.
Right.
Because I need a release right now.
Well, outside of carnival, you see it often where sometimes persons cannot afford alcohol. So when you raise the price of alcohol, they can't afford alcohol, so they go to another drug. So they might purchase marijuana as opposed to alcohol. So on an economic level, you see that move, you see that want to get that release nonetheless, whether it be by alcohol or drugs. And it's according to which one you could afford.
Right.
So you might get the high on one beer, but you might get the high on a 20 piece.
So my assumption is hard drugs are generally expensive.
Yeah.
But then now when you compare it to, well, a night of drinking isn't cheap.
Yeah.
But maybe like one, I don't know, one pill, hit of whatever might technically be cheaper than drinking a whole night. And
so
that might have you high
outside of carnival you see that, but during carnival you see it more. So you see more use, and then for some reason people have money now, so they tend to purchase both and mix both, and we have this this great amount of incidents where persons are now partying harder, they're liming harder,
I found how you framed it was interesting because you're like, well, you see it a lot outside of carnival. So I was preparing for the juxtapose of, well, in carnival, the behavior changes. Like, no, it just gets worse.
Yeah, it gets worse.
One of the things, too, also is, because it's interesting, people are under financial stress at times, right? And obviously, there's always some section of the population under financial strain.
Yeah.
But then, I'm sure you've noticed this too, whether in your private life or in your professional capacity. There are some people who go into debt for the carnival season.
Correct, yeah.
And I guess on some level, it's like, yeah, and once you have the money to throw around, all of a sudden you're buying the levels of alcohol you would never normally buy.
Correct.
And you're buying other things that you probably never would buy because you can afford it all now.
Yeah.
How you're paying it back later.
That is a different issue, yeah.
And on some level, is it fair to say that there's a certain amount of recklessness? Because just think about it. Just taking a loan for carnival. It's not a loan for a car or an asset or a house or your child's school. It's for carnival. There's another carnival next year. If you can't pay off the loan, what are you going to go into? So I wonder if like that starts the brain to be more reckless and your inhibitors go down and then we kind of see what you see.
Yeah, well, with normal human behavior, they throw the responsibility out the window when it comes to certain events and certain issues like carnival and linemen and whatnot. So you see, you have a greater amount of alcohol being purchased around Christmas time because you know you're having guests coming across, you're going to have family across and whatnot. And then for carnival, you also see this explosive behavior of purchasing alcohol, mixing it with drugs, and partying. As I said, they party harder and they lime harder. The persons want to get that release even more. And it's a non-stop cycle. It's from night fetting to juve because they have juve parties as well. To cool what they call it, cooler fetes. Then you have during the day you might have a fete, you might have a boat cruise, and it's a non-stop.
Marshall had the song where he has the refrain, this haunted feeling. Now, before he brought out that song, I had a friend that used that term.
Yeah.
Right? Now, he drank alcohol, but he never, as far as I'm aware, ever did hard drugs or smoke marijuana, smoke cigarettes.
Right.
Right? Drank alcohol.
Yeah.
As he got older, he drank less alcohol, not necessarily more alcohol.
Right.
But like, I'm wondering because it's sounding almost like, why do people want to, I get the haunted part and okay, I want to kind of maximize my carnival and go fete. But what is it that causes people to then want to mix and just have a concoction of narcotics and intoxicants?
It's basically to get a greater high. So even, and we're not just talking about Trinidadians here, we're talking about even visitors. So visitors come down and we have actually had incidents where we found them mixing these drugs with alcohol to get a greater high because they've come to relax. They've come to get out of that rat race.
But is the normal high not enough? Because I have never reached the point where...
And that's the thing with a high. You can never get back the same high. So you look for a greater high.
But alcohol, because I've never done hard drugs, right? But in my experience with alcohol, it's not like, oh my gosh, now my body's immune to alcohol or becoming more resistant to alcohol.
Right.
You know, it's like, that doesn't happen. I get it. I have seen or read where, you know, yes, you do heroin or whatever, you're not going to get the same initial high.
No.
Right? You'll be chasing that high for the rest of your life.
Right.
I get that.
Right. So then you say, but we're not talking about the social drinkers.
We're talking about, right, we talk about people who they are already hooked.
Right. And they want that another high. They want to experiment. So they've come to a new place. They want to relax. They want to enjoy the atmosphere. They want to get into the rhythm and whatnot. So they want to get that high. So they experiment. People experiment. They want to try new things. They want to mix. They want to match.
I mean, it's one thing if you're in a club, you're in a techno club, and I guess culturally on some level, and it's a much smaller situation, right? You do whatever. Take some pills of E, whatever, right?
Right.
And this might be a very naive assumption, but because that's a thing, the people there will respond a certain way to individuals that do that, right?
Right, yeah.
But when you go to a carnival fete setting, it's so expansive now. And you're out in the public. And you're outdoors. Which means that if you catch yourself, you might black out, drunk / high, walk out of the fete into traffic, potentially, right? So there's a part of me, like, if you're raving in a club, you're still in an enclosed space. You know, the doorman might be able to stop you before you go off. Or
You'd hope so.
You know what I mean? You'd hope so. But if you're in carnival, you're out in public.
This is where you want to release. This is where you think you're among friends. So you may not necessarily do it on your own. This is participation on different levels from people around you and whatnot. So you're not liming by yourself, you're not chilling by yourself. You're at social events with other people and they are all experimenting. It's very rare that one person might experiment by themselves.
One of the things also, to some extent, I would imagine, there's a certain amount of peer pressure in that, we want to free up. So people, because I get it, some of them are chasing the high.
Yeah.
But then they also might want to encourage their friends, hey, try this thing.
Yeah, and we're not seeing it at the adult level alone. We're seeing it at the level of teenagers.
Oh, God.
Because you have these parties for teenagers that we spoke about before. And they are experimenting with drugs, and they have drugs at these events. And they have persons, different, they have adults and teenagers. And they have the drugs, they have the alcohol. It's new to some of them. So they want to try it.
This is the thing, right? I think it's the worst kept secret in the country that fets for 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds are not alcohol free.
No.
And
somebody wants to make some money.
But,
so they have a fet.
On some level, I would hazard, I guess most parents know this.
No,
you think most parents don't know that their kids are drinking? I think
No, sorry. Not going to these type of events. I don't think all parents know that.
I think most of them do.
Right?
I don't know about the drugs part.
Yeah.
The drugs part might be like a bridge too far.
Correct.
But I think most of them do. So it's not a thing I did, so I don't know it firsthand. Right? But at the same time, I have seen people in my age range when I was a minor.
Yeah, going to party.
In one case it was a party. He was just publicly intoxicated in the hotel.
Okay.
Right? He was just there publicly intoxicated on a dark beach.
Right.
where there were adults there, but like if he was drunk enough, he could have just picked up himself and walked into the water and never looked back.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, I myself was a man. I didn't know what to make of it at the time. But I do think on some level, society turns a blind eye. So when people like yourself or Ashraf say, do you really want us to enforce all laws? This is one of those things where, but to say that there's drugs in these fats for minors.
Of course, yeah. So we're seeing that as well. And we're urging parents to be a little more responsible and supervise their kids if they're going to these events, these social events. Because it might be a class party, it might be a home party where they have somebody having an event at their home.
Right.
And school kids, they tend to go to each other's homes and have parties and whatnot. And at these parties, there's alcohol, there's also drugs, hard drugs. And we want parents to be aware of this.
This is one of those things where...
So this is additional work for the police. Going to parties and going to fetes and going to events and social events and coming to your home when you're having a party.
Well, I mean, similar to COVID, it's not that easy for police to go into private parties unless there's some sort of public disturbance.
Correct. Yeah.
Or someone reports something. Half the time, y'all ain't going to know nothing, I would imagine.
No, exactly. So we need the report, we need information from members.
But at the very least, if it's in a home, in theory, and this is why I still can't get over the willingness by members of the public to do this to themselves in a public setting.
Place. So you would actually be walking on the street and you would see persons, well, of course, marijuana is decriminalized to some extent now. So we would see the use of narcotics on the government streets during parades at the ban and these kind of things. So you see the use of it. And then you see people that's collapsed on the side of the road and knocked out, and we have to attend to them. We have to call an ambulance. We have to take them for medical attention and whatnot. So we are seeing these issues.
And then one of the things is if you overdo, because a lot of the warnings are the obvious of don't abuse alcohol and mix it and driving, right? But now take the problem with these fetes, and especially Carnival Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
Someone's passed out. They need medical attention now. Call the ambulance. Well, the ambulance is like behind 6 music trucks.
Yeah. So then you might see the police officers taking them into a police vehicle and driving off with them to assist them.
But depending on the location, it's not guaranteed that there's a physical. It goes back to certain wrecking. You need physical space for the car to pass.
Yeah. During Carnival, we tend to have not much vehicles on the road.
Right.
As opposed to pedestrians. But the pedestrians do keep back the thing. But it's something we have to live with, and we can't run over somebody or try, or in trying to take somebody for assistance, we wouldn't be able to rush other persons out of the way.
Yes, we haven't seen that yet, so no one bring that up. No one bring that up. Well, I guess now, on some level, Carnival is soon to come. It's what, 2 weeks away?
Yeah.
So have you all noticed anything specific that might be different this carnival than other carnivals?
No, that's very short season. So, you know, although we have officers outside on the alert, on roadblocks, on patrols and whatnot, especially around events like this, it's a very short season. So we're getting it fast. So it's just a faster rate of what we are accustomed to, but nothing different.
Has traffic management been an issue? Because like I was leaving my house yesterday, and having to pass the savannah.
Right.
So now
it's the usual issue. So you have in the west, you would have a lot of traffic if persons going on a boat cruise, and
Right.
they have to go into that area to get to the boat and whatnot. And just like in around Port of Spain, you have normal traffic restrictions, plus you have normal traffic building up for these events. So you might actually wait in line. You might have an event at like Panorama or Pan in the Savannah, and you might actually have to wait about an hour or two in a line to get to the door.
I don't know if you could answer this, but what will allow for two-way traffic around the savannah? Because there are times when I'm like,
well, Carnival Monday and Tuesday,
Yes.
there would be two-way traffic.
but when you have a big event in the savannah, there's a
Right.
part of me that's like, can't we have two-way traffic? Because the problem is, a lot of these streets that you would then try to go to bypass the traffic are still kind of connected
Yeah.
to routes towards the savannah.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, you're forced to go like further and further into town. And if you're trying to, I don't know, get to Maraval.
Yeah.
You know, that's
yeah, it's that simple drive. If we could have
if you
it
could have,
two-way,
I don't know how easy that is because the problem is you have all the cars coming to the event,
Right,
to the
so
savannah.
the
so
savannah
that's
is pretty big. You're talking about what, 3 miles savannah, the circumference, and you would need police officers to man that. So
Right.
not just the signs, because persons would tend to break the signs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we have police officers stationed at all these locations, and you're talking about for a period of time. So when you have an event at the savannah, whether it be private or public, you need to incorporate a lot of traffic management, a lot of police officers and law enforcement officers to assist with that. That might come at a cost. And the thing is, I don't know if anybody is willing to bear that cost. I can't say from here if that would be something that we could always do. Maybe we could do that at some events, but
Well, I mean, just thinking about it, the problem is the amount of cars coming to the event from
So you
that
would think
direction.
the best case scenario-
You might not want to limit it to one lane.
no, but then you would want persons, instead of going through that traffic, that's to make the whole block to get to Maraval, could simply take a right turn
Yeah.
at Belmont and go
Yeah,
into
maybe,
Maraval.
maybe. And
It's really an issue of dollars and cents because you need to pay officers
right for
to
all that
manage
extra
that.
weight.
Yeah.
All right, so now, I mean, the TPS has is this an initiative, a public advisory, festive shield, secure the vibes, and this is just, I guess, a set of warnings or tips. And I think some of these things, because when you're trying drugs for the first time, I would imagine you could end up in trouble. Like, if I was with someone who's trying drugs for the first time, I'm not going to know necessarily what are the warning signs necessarily and how to make of it. Because look, inability to wake on, oh, maybe they're just drunk.
Right,
Loss of consciousness, maybe they're just drunk. I'm not vomiting. I've seen people vomit because they drank too much alcohol. I'm not, I mean, I've vomited because I drank too much alcohol. I'm not going to know if it goes beyond that now.
Well, if the person is conscious enough, you could ask them, you know, did you consume anything beside the alcohol? Let me know in case I have to take it for medical attention.
You're assuming they have the wits about them to speak.
Yeah, I'm assuming that, yeah. So maybe we could be responsible before we start to consume these things.
It's just, I mean, I know that alternating between alcohol and water kind of works, but at some point you can't just drink too much.
And it has happened all the time.
Right? You could eat and eating helps, or you could just drink too much. And one of the issues with Carnival is, look, a normal party, club, whatever, only goes so long. And to some extent, fets only go so long, but certain Carnival events kind of go
very
long.
Yeah. And what you want to do, you want to prevent that person from getting into any trouble, any kind of situation where they could get themselves into an RTA or injured or somebody taking advantage of them.
Right.
So you want to line with persons, you know, that you're familiar with, that you can trust and depend on to ensure that, listen, they have your back. So you just don't wanna go out there.
But as you say, having your back, I was thinking something.
Yeah.
Because I've seen every now and then you're at some party and somebody decides to. I don't even necessarily know why it starts, but there's a fight, right? It could be there's one drunk guy and like a few people hit him for about 10 seconds or so, or it could be much more engaged on that, right? I haven't necessarily seen the much more engaged part.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think people kind of take for granted, because again, we will say, do not run afoul of the law. Despite what you have seen, you are not going to be the champion who's going to write all the ills now in a drunken fury when you just want to cuss a police officer out.
Right.
But I think people will assume, well, I say with the police, I'm going to be fine. No, the issue is you're maybe going to get vexed with somebody that pushed you.
Yeah,
or hit on your girl.
There's a lot of fights at these events.
But my point is, then you start a fight with some random dude. And then if there's a police officer there, you expect him to just watch and take bets? No, he's going to get involved. And then if you're drunk, listen, we could talk about what happened in the news all we want. But anyway, if you start something, that ain't going to help you, right? And this is part of the thing.
Yeah.
Because ironically, fights are these complex situations where people, when you're inebriated, you might be quick. And then now, when you say have your friends back, right? Yeah. It should be have your friends back by pulling them away before something starts, as opposed to, oh no, I'll help you in this fight.
Yeah.
Beat the other guy. And again, then you could run afoul
to... It could get big. So as soon as, what the police officers do, as soon as fight breaks out, any fight breaks out, they tend to quell it one time. And one of the things they may do is eject the person from the fete or the event or whatever. So I've actually had cause to arrest a number of persons for drinking, behaving disorderly, fighting and whatnot at these events.
But my concern is, depending on how high, how coked up, how drunk, you start to think you're invincible.
Yeah, and then you don't remember anything
right.
sober.
So then, this guy, I don't like his face. I'm going to fight him. He has friends. I'm going to fight his friends. Or the police want to break it up. I'm going to fight the police because how dare they stop me from fighting these guys?
Yeah, what we've seen at these events as well is not just fights among strangers and whatever. We also see a lot of domestic violence at these events as well.
This is intimate partner violence.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
But have you ever had situations with love triangles as well?
Yes.
Because without the use of alcohol or drugs at a non-alcohol event, there was a situation where, there was a confrontation between the two parents because one parent brought the new significant other to the child's event.
Yes,
right? And I think the car felt the full brunt of the limited physical violence. Yeah. Thankfully, it didn't go any further.
Yeah, so these issues of normal human behavior comes out even more because, there's jealousy, there's alcohol in the mix, there's whatever in the mix. And then you see this explosive reaction and whatnot. I've actually seen people screaming and walking off and after arguing with somebody and then the other person tries to hold them back and there's a fight and we have to part the fight, and as you say, there's sometimes these triangles and whatnot that we have to intervene in.
Before people think, we're wasting our time with this thing. Hey, think about all of the love triangles that went wrong in the news throughout the years.
The thing is, we have a lot of these incidents happening, a lot. So we have a lot of persons passing out on the side of the road. Thankfully, police officers assist them.
Let's not forget, there's always a chance of some random idiot who also brings his FUL.
Of course, yes.
While doing all of this.
Yeah, and we spoke about that in a
We spoke about that before. But now I was like, because I'm just thinking, bad judgment, it's not just around driving.
Yeah.
All right, we have to go Martin on the line. We'll take the call. Good morning on here.
Good morning, Sean and to ASP Arun.
Hi, how are you doing?
A couple of things. Alcohol removes all inhibition.
Yeah.
People become superhero. Their judgment is clouded, and everything, as I say, everything turns into confusion and things like that. More importantly, the high taxes on alcohol, I'm hoping it mitigates a lot of the drinking. But there is a consequence, a good consequence that comes out of the high taxes. I'm seeing a number of bars being closed.
Yeah.
And we have to look at a number of bars and the people who operate in these bars. And a majority of them have what we call the venues. And the venues, a lot of them get basically employed into these establishments.
Yeah.
And Sean, your co-host, Karen, has already identified how our health system is impacted by a lot of these. So that is one of the positive consequences. But my talk and my call today is something far needs attention right away. And I'm talking about the privilege committee. I see they want to bring both Minister of Public Utilities and the Honorable Prime Minister to the privilege committees. But I need another issue to become part of the privilege committee. And it's something that Senator Obika raised in the parliament when he basically raised on a standing order to basically muff the Honorable Naked, bringing into the public domain the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator of the Achille Chambers. And I want to put that in context. How we spending taxpayers' money and how, I'm putting it in quote, how little black boys are treated and poor families. Look at how much money we spent on the Pico fiasco. Taxpayers spent $28 billion on that issue. To keep that afloat and to cover up the perpetrators of that misdeed. And we know it goes back to a treasurer of a political party, a former attorney general in CIB. We spend a lot of money. We spend a lot of money to go after the Piaco airport. Even an attorney general, they say his memory lapse. We lost 30 million because he did something wrong on an affidavit. His judgment was poor. He lied on an affidavit. Look at all those things, the pulling of Malcolm Jones issue. A lot of money being spent to protect certain people. And I don't want to be offensive. A little child, and I'm using the word, the big black boy, we do not want to investigate and basically bring that perpetrator and all the people involved in that. The police was complicit. And I'm hoping, if as a citizen outside Parliament, if I could have invoked the privilege committee, I would like them to investigate it. Because that is a institution. We don't have to spend a lot of money to find out more information. It would have been the most cost-effective and efficient way of finding out the perpetrators of the Achille Chambers. For far too long, little black poor people, children, have been violated in all forms and fashion. I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thanks, Scholar. Well, first of all, I'll say this. I would hazard a guess that those types of crimes are not limited, victim-wise, are not limited to any one race.
Yeah,
right?
that's correct.
It's just that this is a high-profile situation
Yeah,
we're aware
of
of.
course, yeah.
The problem, I don't disagree with you. This is another example to me where I feel as though the public just doesn't care enough. See, Clico, it was about people's money.
Yeah.
So you're going to care, right? But at the end of the day, abuse against minors could be out of control.
Yeah.
And still, the vast majority of the population are not going to directly be involved in a case like this.
I remember a few years back, we got reports from, when I was in Special Victims Department, we actually got reports from adults that when they were children were victims of abuse, and they were of different races, and they were at the hands of persons, clergymen and whatnot, in particular churches and whatnot.
Because I think, if you go, it's more geographic.
Yeah.
If you go to certain areas of the country, the victimization will be a certain way.
Right.
Right? Now, in this case, this is beyond. Forgive me, this is beyond the norm because it's now high-profile individuals, right?
One thing I found that when I started to work in special victims department, I always thought that, like in the case of incest, I always thought geographically it was in particular areas.
Yes.
Only to realize that when we started to get reports and we looked across all the reports.
Well, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's basically across the entire Trinidad and Tobago.
Like I know of a situation.
So you would think, well, look, in this part of Trinidad, you have more incest.
It's not just rural areas. It's in town, it's north,
over.
it's south,
it's
Tobago.
And when it came to the races and whatnot, it was around 50-50. So there was no great disparity between the races.
And dare I say, you say 50-50 mainly because there are two significant majorities.
Yeah.
Right?
But there were percentages of,
of other. Because I was going to say, if you didn't detect or know of those instances, they probably exist. It's just so small that it might not be on your radar.
Correct. But because of the geographical location, the majority of the races were 50-50.
So the thing is, this is just one of those things where, yes, we suspect a cover-up. We have reason to believe so.
Yeah.
But also you have to add on to the fact that, look, this is not the first situation where politicians, they just, whether they're actively covering it up or they're just trying to stay away from a situation for whatever reason, they don't really push it, they don't talk about it, they don't champion it, whatever. And this is not the only one, right? So to what extent is it that the politicians don't have the political stomach to follow through with this? Not that they want to ignore it, they just don't want the pressure or the strain or the headache or the backlash from whoever. Of pursuing it.
And that is when he raised the issue of the TTP as being complicit. I'm not too familiar in what way, in terms of that investigation. And that's why it's important, and we spoke about it off here, the importance of independent investigators.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of the issue is you could, just because a police officer is involved, every situation doesn't mean the police are covering it up. It could be a police. That distinction technically does matter. One is a system by which there's a lot of members that are participating. The other is a minority, could be as small as one, where, it doesn't take much to undermine an investigation with one bad actor, and that does make a big difference in how do you solve the problem, right? One is a lot, in some ways, easier, but then also, if it's just one lone rogue, to detect that and to deal with that isn't always as easy, as finding a system being an issue. But then fixing a whole system in the long run has no challenges. We have a remoney line caller. Good morning, you're on here.
John Michael Small, good morning to you and your guests.
Morning.
Good day.
I want to disagree with your opening statement with concerning taxation.
Which part of it?
Because in Trinidad and Tobago,
I kind of hedge my bets on it a little bit. So, go ahead.
Why I'm saying so, in Trinidad and Tobago, right? We started off doing the easy thing and not the right thing. Where taxes concerned, everybody should be paying the taxes, especially in tax. And the public servants alone shouldn't have to be carrying the bill. And I'll tell you why. You see, the self-employed people, right, there are some doctors who you go by, they accept cash alone.
Yeah.
The barbers, the taxi drivers, the maxi drivers, the garage owners. That is just a few. These people should be paying taxes on their incomes, but they don't. On the flip side now, you have the former Prime Minister telling you 50 cents in the dollar is the wages, salaries, transfers, and subsidies. 30 cents is the pay loans, 20 cents is for development. So if he spend $500 billion in 10 years, half of that money went in wages, salaries, transfers, and subsidies. And what you have to understand is that the self-employed benefit from these transfers and subsidies. Yeah, they do. Because you have STIDAP, you have free education,
healthcare,
you have pensions, you have disability grants, you have home improvement grants. You see, the managers of this country don't understand. 70 to 90% of the managers' time is taken up with communication. And if they come and they sit down and they discuss things with people instead of trying to force it down the throats, for us to understand. Yeah, we got to understand. Property taxes are must, no matter how small it is. Because before you had the whole land and building taxes at $20 and $19 and $10 for some people. What's supposed to happen? You're supposed to come with a better mechanism. Because where you live, you want the roads fixed, you want the drains, you want street lights, mail, water. Yeah, you want the full works, you want garbage collection. It cannot all be free. Dr. Williams tried to do a good thing in the early days, but it worked out in the end. It worked out bad in the end because we grew up now believing that the government has to do that and not paying our way. And the sooner that Trinidadians realize that hey, you have to pay away in this world and we're living is not free. That's why we had the influx of immigrants. Because they seen living. Just as how they call it, tell about the bars and the venues. They seen living. If they wasn't seen living here, they wouldn't have come. They'd have go somewhere else. And our country, we have to straighten it out. And all that to it fuel crime. Yeah, and I as a public servant, I fed up. Because when I watch my tax bill at the end of the month and I realize wait, there are certain things I cannot access. I can access a home improvement grant. No, I can't. No kind of food card, nothing at all. I had to pay my way. I don't have a problem with it. But at the same time, it's time for the adults to act responsible. All right? Have a good day, good program as usual.
Thanks,
and do ever let anybody here saying that again?
Saying what?
Because the government's paying revenue, right? It's 1, taxes and royalties. 2, fines and penalties. 3, selling the assets. 4, selling negotiable instruments. 5, borrowing. And 6, utilizing the reserves that we have. The state has 6 main sources of income. What we have to do is find out how much fines and penalties we've been paying, and also fees for public services. Have a good day. Go on.
Thanks, Colin. Yeah, one thing, though, with the transfers and subsidies, I don't know if you were talking about people who do work for the government, but doing work for the government is not an easy way to make a living. Because let's just say, now I don't know if I was stiffed, but as far as I'm aware, and I had independent confirmation of this, ironically, technically speaking, the police, I'm a subcontractor to a contractor of the police, and I'm probably out in terms of wages. Like $180,000 plus.
Right, yeah.
Right? Like I was doing a job before this for, after the initial 2 or 3 paychecks, I was doing a job for over a year, maybe 2 years, and not being paid.
Right.
I might have, if I total it, I think I might have gotten not even a quarter of.
Yeah, I think we owe a good few service providers.
And what happens is certain services now, the actual people who do the work now, at least at one point, particularly around COVID time, before and after, are hesitant because I'm like, well, yes, but I get into this arrangement and then you can't pay me.
Right.
And I'm waiting. And that's been the case for a long time, but it kind of got worse at one point in certain areas.
Well, yeah, I've seen some improvement in that area.
And it's not just the police, it's not just the police.
Yeah.
Because the people who do certain jobs are required as just support jobs across the board. And, you know, okay, some ministry will call the contractor who does the work, and it's like, yeah, you could do it for us. It's like, I don't know if I want to take on the job.
Well, one of the things I noticed with that in the TTPS, we actually improved in that area because one of my duties as a First Division officer is to liaise with the service provider and the TTPS in terms of payment and making sure, because like nearly every week I have to, like Toyota, I have to go into Toyota nearly every week just to make sure that the books are up to mark and that payments are up to mark so that we could get the services we need for the police vehicles and whatnot.
Now, I think this is a politician thing. This is not a UNC or PNM thing. Discussing things to communicate it, that's not something that we're well versed in, right? We're too informal. So because we're informal in our mindset and the way that we do things, we don't know how to do things formally. And when we try, it comes across as being overblown and they're not serious. Why you have to complicate things so it's simple? You just do this, and it's done. But when you're running a country, running a corporation, running a ministry, running a public sector entity, running a big multinational private entity, you know, like you can't just kind of do things willy-nilly. And with the case of government, it's not, I can't say that one group does it. It's just,
and then the procurement process is not tardy, but it is a process, and you have to go through it by law.
But it's not just procurement. It's like whatever policy that they want to institute, more fines, new laws, whatever. The communication is not always there.
Yeah.
And then I also think sometimes that's the case because the long-term planning is not always there, so you don't know how to communicate.
I was speaking to a very good friend of mine yesterday. Up to yesterday, we spoke about this, the taxes and whatnot, and the amount of taxes. But he's in the States now. He lives in the States. He has a house. And when he called out the amount of taxes he has to pay, I'm wondering if the salary is even enough. Because
his taxes in the States.
Yeah, and talking about house tax, insurance.
You see, the key is, right, when you're in Canada, for example, you're taxed a lot, and the government provides a lot for you. But the point is, you've settled into a balance where this is where the salaries are to live, and you pay, you know, like over half of it in taxes or whatever, right? But the point is, it's like the economy has been able to settle into a balance. When you want to change the balance now, there's pain to get to the new. So when you want to increase taxes now, we could become a society where half your paycheck goes to taxes, and it could work. But to go from where we are to something like that overnight, you're gonna kill some people. Literally, you're gonna get people that can't afford their medication because the consequences of it. An economy can't be forced into a healthy position.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, it's an organic entity that is basically the collective will of an entire society. So you can't just force it and hope that nothing goes wrong. Because when you do so, things usually do go wrong. But I kind of understand what you're saying, but I actually think you didn't necessarily disagree with me. One thing, property tax, I think at this point, 2 governments in, that's not for local government. That's to try to deal with the deficit on the central government's overall deficit bill, right? Back to the Privileges Committee. Here's the thing. I actually have no issue with Marvin Gonzalez bringing this up. I just think it's a thing that you kind of have to do, right? Is it going to be successful? Probably not. Is it that big of a deal? Maybe not that big of a deal, but it's just one of those things that you kind of have to do it before it becomes a big deal. He points out 4 things that happens because of alluding to corruption in the independent bench. Consequences that we're going to experience, and I guess trying to nip it in the bud and not experience it is the best outcome. The first one is it imputes corruption and bad faith motives to independent senators, right? And impugning it has its negative consequences because now they're under suspicion for no reason, and you treat people differently when they're under suspicion, right? You believe them differently, right, Commissioner? It undermines the dignity, authority, and independence of the Senate as a constitutional institution. Yes, it can. It could cause people to not just look at it funny, but then now how do you interact with it? How do you treat it? The importance that you give it, and potentially, once it's undermined enough, you might remove it and replace it with something worse because, again, it's not that there's evidence presented. It abuses parliamentary privilege by making serious allegations without due process. This is where you get into the... I've heard Rowley and friends do that quite a few times. The precedent was set probably before the Rowley administration did it. It's one of those things where you have to kind of try to reverse it, but it's not something that you could just say, oh, well, you know, Minister, you can't do this now. That precedent is there. We've kind of accepted it. If we want to culturally shift away from our precedent, we're going to have to put in the work to do so. The Privilege Committee and just throwing that out alone is not enough. It brings Parliament and its members into odium and disrepute. I'll be honest, I have no idea what ODM means. It's the first time I've ever heard that word. But disrepute, contrary to the purpose and spirit of parliamentary privilege. It's potentially tied into that, but I think it goes further into the respect for the institution, which unfortunately precedent has been set for the institution of Parliament and the halls of Parliament to be disrespected, again, by members of both sides, both the current administration and the previous administration. High senior level cabinet members have had notorious hot mic incidents. Bleh. So I get it. I do think though it's just one of those things. It's kind of like when there's an accident, you know, they say our thoughts and prayers are for the victims.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day,
you have to.
There's certain things that you have to say, certain things you have to do.
Yeah.
Right. And this is just one of those things. Because I agree with everyone saying, hey, don't just throw that out there saying 2 senators were corrupt. Show us the evidence. Otherwise, I mean, it's in Parliament, so I guess there's no slander there. But and that's the point about abusing privilege. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. Meanwhile, ironically, at a time when alcohol consumption is high, because I think the Bar Association, somebody brought this up.
Yeah.
I understand bars are under pressure. And it's one of those things where I want to say, look, you see they're under pressure. Look at what these customs and excise doing to bars.
Right.
Carnival is a time when bars are less frequented because people are more at fetes.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how much of it. I mean, I mean, think about it, right? Other times of the year, there used to be police just watching Frankie's, you know, like that area when there would be like a lot of people there.
Yeah, yeah.
But during Carnival, the people are going to be in the savannah or somewhere to the west or somewhere, you know, some large fete. That's where there's going to be the potential of things going wrong.
I was speaking about our previous owner yesterday, and he indicated that he had to diversify before, well, even before this issue arose, where he had to sell food,
right,
including the drinks, and that's how he diversified in order to meet his bills and his wages and whatnot, and he was successful. Yeah.
Well, one of the issues, I don't necessarily go out to bars anymore, but I don't want to go and just drink. Right. I would have liked to enjoy like
something to eat,
something to eat, and not just cutters, you know, not just cheese sticks, and wings, and whatever random minor fried food you could pull out of a little jokey kitchen, but like food, because I think this is very, you know, left field, but there was a famous situation of a high-end restaurant that I think they were like one of the top 50 restaurants in the world, or one of the top 50 restaurants in this city or whatever, like New York or something. Like, so it was a big, they weren't close to the top, but they weren't bad, you know, they were relatively high up. And they were trying to figure out how to improve their position, how to improve their business. And the mistake was, well, let's just copy what the top people do. And he's like, the owner was like, no. Let's do what they don't do. So he pointed to 2 things. He had a guy that was heavy into coffee and a guy that was very interested in beer. So instead of having a wine sommelier, he had a coffee and beer sommelier.
Right.
And the thing at the end of the day is, listen, I actually think beers and shandies pairing with meals is much more refreshing and enjoyable than certain wines.
Yeah.
Especially like dry. I mean, maybe you enjoy a dry wine. But he was pointing to, hey, look, we could do this pairing.
Yeah.
Right? And there are gonna be a lot of, because the commenter who was pointing to this example, he himself was like, I don't want wine.
Yeah.
I would like a beer with my meal.
Maybe the patrons, the diversity could be that you have a particular clientele to your bar. And as opposed to a different bar. So you gear your business towards that clientele to keep them.
My thing is, if a high-end restaurant is going to see the value in it, you know, because I guess in England there's the pub culture where it's not just the drinks, it's the food.
Yeah, and then you have the sports going on and that kind of. So it's a culture.
It's not just, well, we have alcohol.
Yeah, you know, we're not just stopping at a bar. We're not bar hopping. It's outside the bar hopping scene. So you have persons coming to the bar because they're dedicated and they patronize the bar because of the, how do you say it, the connection they have with the bar.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like it's not just, oh, we go here to drink. Now it's like, no, we go here as a community.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just an alcoholic establishment. Yes, some people will still get
so
drunk.
we have, so you have your roti, you have your cutters, you have your whatever, and you go there because of the experience as opposed to just going for a drink.
I think as a nation, we have been exposed to better food.
Yeah.
So what that means is some of the food that might have been acceptable 20 years ago now just doesn't, doesn't reach up to standard. And I think on some level, I wish one thing that I missed with the hotel school, the food and beverage program, from what I saw, limited experience, was pretty good. I know the Defense Force used to train their chefs there, right? We have the capability. We do have skilled cooks. We can produce better things. I guess it just comes down to will the public want better. And you could say that with politics as well, right? You could say that with the Achille Chambers thing as well, because you don't necessarily, it's almost like if Carnival comes up once a year, it's right after Christmas. So it's so, and then of course, those that have families or whatever, you get distracted with July, August. Like it's so easy to just mentally reset and let important issues kind of slip your mind.
Yeah, well, what I can tell you, Sean, is that when you look at the Achille Chambers case, from this perspective, how much years after, and you look at the laws that have changed, that have been created, that come into effect, and you look at the investigative patterns of the police now, as opposed to before, you see a great improvement. So you're seeing better laws. You see, and I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about in the past 10 years. You're seeing better laws. You're seeing better investigative techniques. You're seeing better policing response to these type of incidents, as opposed to when that incident took place.
And here's the thing that I think people have not necessarily put two and two together. But on some level, you're looking at what happens with the Special Victims Unit and all of the innovation and change, whether it's procedure, whether it's structure, whether it's laws, rules, directives, what leadership, what have you. And you're seeing the successes. And for the life of me,
we can't get away from the...
Why can't it then be translated into other aspects of policing? Because when you come now, like, think about it. I don't know if, yes, we could get homicide statistics, but I just don't know if the success rates is going to be the same, and the level of, well, this is what we've seen, and the trends and the information and the data and cases that we successfully dealt with, and so on and so on and so on. And ironically, one of the most complex crimes in modern society is sex crimes and abuse.
But what the TTPS has improved on, it may not be the detection rate as we want it to be, but in terms of the response. So you have a better response as opposed to the
these crimes are hard on the detection.
Yes, and the thing is that with SVD crimes, the victim always knows the perpetrator in 99% of the cases. So you have a better solve rate.
Now, question, cases like in Carnival when people get drunk and raped and stuff like that, that is also SVD crimes, but it's just that the rate is the minority. Thankfully.
So that's why we have these outreach programs and whatnot.
I hate to say this, but does that mean that perhaps the rate of familial abuse, sexual abuse, we might be kind of willfully ignorant to how large it is?
Yes, we would be.
As a public?
As a public, not as the police.
Yes.
Because we do have the reports, we do get reports, and we do investigate them. And there are a lot of reports. It's just that we don't disclose the actual investigations themselves.
As we're here, let me just ask a question that puts two and two together. Does SVD see domestic incidents increase during Carnival, Christmas period?
Well, I don't know now, because it's been about 2 years since I've left. But you do see increases around these times of the year.
Of these domestic?
Correct, yeah.
Any reason for that? Or?
No, well, as we spoke about the abuse of alcohol and the narcotics, those are contributing factors. Then you have things like jealousy would arise more now because you have the party, one of the parties leaving to go out. So you have an increase in persons arguing and clashing, and their opinions not meeting, and they have fallen out. And so you see an increase in domestic violence reports around this time. So you have maybe a husband, let's use this as an example, he wants to go and fet, and his wife doesn't want him to go. And then, you know, it causes a rift in the family and whatnot. So you see an increase in terms of that.
Like, just think about it, huh? Some people might think, this is very obvious. You don't go to a fet without your significant other if you want to keep your significant other. But at the same time, where do you learn this sage wisdom in life, right? Don't take it for granted that everybody knows this. So, also, this is partially my own curiosity, but this also could be relevant. To what extent now is it a risk? Yes, we know of minors getting into their parents' alcohol stash.
Yeah, that's normal.
Right?
Yeah,
what about drug stash?
We have had cases like that. It has, so far it has been minimal to like marijuana.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to high-end drugs and that kind of thing. But I wouldn't doubt that it happens. It's just that maybe underreported. But we have had cases where, you know, children would go into their parents' drawer and find narcotics and use them.
Do family members use date rape drugs on their family?
No, we have hardly had any reports. You can't doubt it though, because some of these crimes are underreported. Yeah, so you may have a situation like that.
And of course, there's always the situations where any family does not want to, because you say usually the perpetrator is known to the victim.
Yeah, and we've had cases where the victims come out, and because it's a close family member, they don't give the evidence. So, and that's another important point. And I've spoken to officers in the past, especially with the recent incidents that came up and the issue of body cams coming up. And officers have indicated, a lot of us indicated, you know, listen, we want the body cams. Because you're in the charge room, you're in the public domain, persons come to make reports, and we can capture these reports one time. So we capture the evidence one time. So the body cam works kind of twofold. It protects the officer, and it protects you, yes, but it also captures evidence. So whereas we have to sit down, so imagine a victim comes of domestic violence to the station and reports, listen, I was just beaten, and my husband or my wife, my significant other beat me, and I have bruises and whatnot. This is all captured on the body cam. And as opposed, I don't know what would be the legal ramifications or what would be the procedure that may change, but we have the evidence in front of us. And you know, we also have the case where, well, officer, I don't want to give a statement because I don't want him charged. I don't want the person charged.
Yes.
We would now have the evidence we need to say, look, let us charge. We don't have to consider you don't want any case. We don't have to consider that, listen, you don't want the person to be charged. We have the evidence. You just told us, word for word, what happened, what caused the injury, whatever occurred, and what we will do is consider charging for the sake, for public safety, public interest, for your own safety, for your own interest. We could charge, we have the evidence now. And officers saying, listen, we want the body cams.
And I think there is the risk that if people know that, yes, they're being recorded, they will say nothing. But the flip side is, I do feel, at least in some of the time, it's when their survival instinct kicks in. They do what they need to do to try to protect themselves. And then after the fact, and sometimes it's because you have a family member chipping in the air, you know, blood is thicker than water. We're all family. You need to forgive and forget.
But then the worst things happens to the victim.
Yes.
And then the public comes on, oh, the police didn't do this and the police didn't do that.
And because there's also a debate, I don't know to what extent it's actually become a thing, but the idea in the states of making paternity testing mandatory, so that they can't have false paternity, right? Or well, I guess there's no such thing as false maternity, so false paternity.
Mistaken maternity.
So the point is, I thought it was a good idea because usually the issue is, well, the man doesn't trust the woman, right? But we know that it happens.
It happens.
So if we just kind of make it routine, then it's no longer about trust. And it's not about women are not trustworthy. It's just, you kind of just take all of that out of the equation.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same thing. If you take away the ability for family members to try to gaslight you and say, oh no, well, how you could do this? Family, you know, and family has to stick together, and this is an internal thing, and don't go take this release. It's like, if you just kind of make it in a situation where it's mandatory, all of a sudden, now the victim can be like, look, it's out of my hands. It's out of my hands. Right?
That's how police work is. So we've cut the police, the work on police by half, because we capture the evidence one time, as opposed to sitting down and writing every single word you have to tell us, sign it, initial it, have it sorted out by a JP and whatnot. So now we have it captured on video footage, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be a robbery, whether it be a murder, whatnot. We capture the evidence one time. And officers have indicated this, we want the body cams for these reasons.
But I do like the idea, especially for SVU crimes.
Yeah.
Because, okay, a neighbor hears something.
Yeah.
They don't want to report it, but the neighbor hears it, and now the police have a recording. Her face was bruised. It's not an opinion.
Yeah.
It is something that you could take to a judge and say, well, judge, in your opinion, do you agree with me that she was beaten?
No, part of the investigative process is that we take pictures of injuries of victims.
Right.
Yeah. But in this way, we negate that, okay, well, yes, I came to the station, but I don't want any police assistance. You've come to the station, we've captured everything.
But what about when you go to a site?
Yeah.
The victim then call you. Somebody else call you. The victim is uncooperative from the front, but the point is, once you
show that
interview her and have that interaction, you have something a bit more tangible than just opinion.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, look, now we reach the realm of, it's not about whether you trust the police or not. Like, evidence needs certain standards, and the opinion of officers, no matter how trustworthy, is not as strong as video evidence, which is potentially, like uncorruptible, right? Obviously, there's some extreme, you could, But generally speaking, you do it properly. This is going to be a proper recording, objectively, of what's there. There's no arguing with it.
Yeah, you see the trauma, you see how the person reacts, you see how they behave, you see the actual injuries, you see the torn clothing. So what we could take, as you say, a picture paints up 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Imagine how much a video would paint.
Also, it might help for officers having to deal with unruly crowds in Carnival, just saying. But you know what, to be fair though, police have a pretty decent record during Carnival period, so nobody looks to kind of try to solve social justice in your own hands, in a drunken rage, please. You will be justifiably hit with a baton, probably. There was one time I saw some guy, he got in trouble with police at the party. I don't know why, right? I don't know if it was right or wrong, but I do know that the baton broke.
A wooden baton?
A wooden baton. Now, it didn't look like he was being hit that hard.
Right.
It was like, he was clutching his leg and pain and it was broken. It seemed like that baton was at the end of its service life.
Right.
But it was just kind of a little bit humorous in an otherwise serious situation. But look, trying to lighten things up just a little bit, we just had a real heavy conversation of sex crimes and drug abuse and kids and folks, hey, maybe keep a better eye on your kids. Don't just expect the police to solve all of the problems for you. Police in schools could only do so much. That said, thanks to the callers. I assume we don't have any comments, but we're out of time, so I can't take it anyway. Thanks, ASP Room, for joining me once again.
And just to remind members of the public, any information you have, that's the numbers to call, 999, 800 tips, 555, so that we can get the information to act on.
Yes, disclosing evidence, or you also disclose it to the police, not just to the public, just saying. And in some cases, it is actually would not be appropriate to send it to the media first. Sometimes you should send it to the police. Just say it. But
maybe both.
Well, maybe both, but that's a conversation for another day. So I'll leave that there, folks. This is talking about WESN. Shawn Michael Small reminding you, have a good day, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the public. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. So even if you're like me, where you might be upset at certain people, that you might see on the road, that you might question their decision making, I ain't there be nice to them. If I saw certain ministers, I'll still be nice to them. I might disagree with their ideas, but they're still human beings, and I gain nothing and I achieve nothing by just trying to pick a fight or an argument or being mean. And we should also remember that when we're online giving our political 2 cents, and then we see someone from the other side pop up, and all of a sudden things get real ugly real fast. Let's try and refrain from that. No matter what else is going on, be civil to each other. We'll see each other. Have a good day. Make it so we can see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Hello everyone, this is 10 questions on this week, on this day. Let's tell you what was happening in this edition of the program. You remember the case we call the Vindra Paul Kuhlman murder trial. 2 times around, 9 persons were indicted for her kidnapping, her disappearance, and death. Lots of details in there to unwind, but the fact is that at the end of the day, all 9 persons were held not guilty, and the subhead was that they were to be awarded $20 million, split up among them. The question is, for ordinary people looking at this lady was kidnapped at her home and taken and never seen again. There were stories as to what happened with her body. The fact of the question is a question of justice. To what extent we can say that justice has been served for people who don't go behind and below the understandings of what it means to be a subject of the justice system in Trinidad and Tobago. What may have gone wrong? Was it with the trial? Or was it with the evidence brought forward? How do we settle that matter in the minds of people who still want to know? Farid Ali, good to have you, as always.
Good morning, Mr. Justice. A pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's talk about it from the perspective of the question of justice. Talk about how justice may have been served to people who won't understand how is it that 9 people, not 1 or 2, 9 people, 9 young men were picked up and said to be high suspects in this matter. The trial went to the court, this court system twice, correct me if I'm wrong. At the end of the day, it was held that none of them could have been held guilty for the death and disappearance of this lady.
If it is we were to pay attention to what transpired. I mean, it's been some time. Just a synopsis of where we were.
Sure.
Miss Vindra Naibal Kuhlman was abducted at a home in Lange Park in Shagona sometime in December 2006, if I'm correct. What transpired thereafter in December 2006 is the evidence that was laid in the courtroom is that she was taken to unknown disclosed place, unknown, yet to be disclosed place in La Puerta de Gomatin, where she was subsequently in the care and control and custody of nine alleged killers. Her body was dismembered, meaning her legs was removed, her arms were removed, and eventually her head was removed. She was subsequently buried under a sheet of galvanized in that community. Now, as the evidence unfolded in the courtroom, it pivoted around one individual, meaning one Keon Gloucester. Gloucester indicated that though he was present, he was not part of the exercise to kill. For the listening public out there, murder is really the unlawful killing of a human being with the intention to kill or the intention to cause serious bodily harm. Basically, you, and I'm saying you in a very loose way, Mr. Gloucester or any other person who was present at the time, if they were present, unknown to them that those other persons surrounding them had an intention to kill when they were alleged to have abducted the Miss Kuhlman, Naibal Kuhlman, then not having that intention and she being there in their presence, if they were not active participants in the murder or the active participants in the dismembership and the serious bodily harm that was executed on her body, then the question of whether they are culpable or liable in the eyes of the law features. In other words, there were persons who it is alleged were present who had no idea that when she was brought there that there was an intention to cause grievous bodily harm or an intention to kill. They were what we call inactive participants, for want of a better expression, meaning they were there and they did not consent to what was taking place. Now,
was it established that any one or all of these 9 were at least there?
It was established that one, Keon Gloucester, he was minimally one person present who did not participate in any way, nor did he consent. But because of the numbers, meaning that there were 9 persons present, he simply, his view was particularly trumped, meaning that what he thought and his views as to not killing or causing serious bodily harm, it didn't matter. He in no way could have changed the minds or succeeded in changing the minds of the persons there. He was there and he as the evidence unfolded, he did not participate in any way and he claimed that he didn't know. However, he witnessed what took place. Now, that in itself, not having an intention to kill or an intention to cause serious bodily harm to Ms. Vindra Naipaul Coolman, and not having participated in the act, because for a murder conviction to be secured, one has to actually perform the act in some way, contribute towards dismemberment, contribute towards the taking of life, and at the same time do so with a criminal intent to cause death. So I know it may be difficult for the public to balance. How could you be dismembering a body, but yet still you don't have any intention to kill? In other words, the marriage of the action of dismemberment and the marriage of the criminal intent to kill whilst dismembering, it must come together.
Let me just put something in there that I'll be talking about it, that aspect of it. You know, my grandmother, my late grandmother, used to say, a lot of times the bystander is worse than the thief. But that is a saying, that is not a legal principle, right?
Well, and there is an element of truth in it. If it is you're a bystander and you made no diligent efforts to bring to stop the wrong that is being executed, then I guess the bystander in that instance is worse than the actual criminal. So in other words, you're there, you're present, you're seeing a criminal act being committed, and you're making no efforts to stop. But Mr. Gloucester's position was that his position in terms of him not wanting that to happen, it didn't matter in the fate of 9 other persons next to him who were intent on committing the crime. So obviously when there was an investigation by police officers, there was a certain amount of credibility that may have been lent to his view or belief that would have been assigned to his to what he says in terms of him not participating or not being an active participant. But to get into the crux of the matter where we are, these individuals went to trial, and in May of 2016, they were, but for 2 individuals, they all won their cases in terms of a decision was made at the end of the prosecution laying its case that there was insufficient evidence for these individuals to answer to the charge of murder. Now, where we are in the scheme of things is this. Imagine being accused of murder and arrested in 2007 for a murder that involved dismemberment of a prominent public figure in terms of Vindra Naipaul Coolman. And as a result of same, there is a public interest in the matter, meaning persons wanting to see justice being done, and having these persons answer to the charge. It takes 10 years for these charges to be, for the charge, the allegation, for the trial to be, for it to be piloted through the criminal justice system and through our courts, and then only to find out that these persons were deemed innocent. Naturally, they filed suits against the state for malicious prosecution and what we call the wrongful laying of charges, because clearly what a no-case submission does, and to the public listing, what happens in a trial is you have evidence being piloted by the DPP's office through state counsel and witnesses, where the allegation is being put to the accused persons, in this case all 9, and where the evidence as to the part that each and every individual played in the execution of Mrs. Kuhlman, Naipaul Kuhlman, is laid in the courtroom, and then the jury is hearing this. The defense's role at the end of the laying of the evidence is to do what we call a no-case submission, meaning it's a legal submission which addresses the issue of the nature and the quality of the evidence, and whether that evidence, beyond reason, well, on a balance of probabilities, whether the evidence is sufficient to connect the person who sit in the dock, meaning the 9 individuals, to the crime that was committed. It was so deemed after the no-case submissions were made by the defense counsel, following the evidence being laid by the prosecution, the DPP's office, that there wasn't enough evidence to create a sufficient connect between the 9 persons and the crime and the offense that took place. So 7 of the 9 were free to go at the end of that period. Now, we have to backtrack a bit. In 2013, there was an application